I knew very soon after Teddy was born that there was something that just wasn't quite right. We had a 5-year-old who was very, very much in his own world, and he was just clearly very, very different to all of the children.
Around 11 months of age, I noticed that the eye contact was dropping, her speech was getting less, and I took her to a few doctors and no one wanted to diagnose her.
By the time Maddie was 4, he was indeed terrified of the world, which became almost anything. He would begin to self-injure pretty significantly. He would go into hyperstates where he might stay awake for 3 or 4 days.
Damien had a ferocious brain problem. No test could detect. I went to doctors and I said, Damien's autistic, severely autistic. What can we do about it? And they unbelievably said, find him a home. But, you know, he had a home. He had our home.
I used to take the videos to schools all over Sydney, special schools, and show them images of Maddie, and most of them, again, would give me much sympathy, but just say they couldn't look after him. And the truth was I didn't know what I could possibly say to my wife, you know, because she would say to me constantly, look, I can get us through the days. You need to work out how we get through the decades. And I finally went to one school that was almost my last chance, but was meant to be our best chance. They offered Maddie an hour a week in Sydney, and we were living in Bega, 500 kilometres away. A young girl ran down the path from that school and said to me, Barry, you can't bring Maddie here, you know, it'll be no good for him. And I said, look, that's okay. I can't anyway. She said to me, look, the trouble is what you're looking for doesn't exist. And when she said that, that was the light bulb moment. And I decided that I would stop looking for places and that I would start looking for people, because I couldn't believe we would be the only one that had a child like Maddie.
We were one of the original 6 families that in August 1994, the 6 groups of families started working out how to set up a school here. Our son Patrick was one of the original 12. We were just struggling to get some reasonable school for our young kids.
But the mums had started a support group, and because we had the support group, we started to have a little nucleus of people that might work together. And when I came across Giant Steps Montreal, I thought, well, that's a good example of what we want to do. Basically, a few of us went to Giant Steps Montreal and actually had a look at it.
And they had, that original family group had begun. You know, Giant Steps was just established and so not known at all. And so I came to this very old building. I met Rob Llewellyn-Jones, who was the founding chairman, met Libby, and even though there was no track record, it was in its early days, it wasn't well funded, it was in a very dilapidated building, and there was just a handful of children and families. I just knew that would be the best place for Maddie. I left and rang my wife and said, I found the place, we have to move to Sydney.
We teamed up beautifully. And what that meant was that we were a really collaborative force.
So we couldn't be the school that only people that could afford to go could go. So the ethos that was there from the very beginning but became very much part of who we are was that we just said, look, we are a community, and in a community, if everybody does the best they can, we'll get there. Again, we would sit around scratching our heads, mums and dads, friends, going, okay, how are we going to raise some money here? Because, you know, we'll go broke in 6 months. And indeed, we did start to run into financial trouble fairly quickly within about 6 months of me moving the family.
Between 1996, when we first started talking about early intervention, and then I think it was 1998, we started early learning. We were also thinking about, well, how can we grow the program and help more kids.
Everybody should have access to quality education that teaches them as they best learn. And in order to do that, we need to not charge school fees.
Dr. Helen Appleton, who is our psychologist on staff, started to form this idea of what if we bring those specialists on site? And from that idea, the mental health clinic was born.
Our population of young people here at Giant Steps are often not included in research. What I've discovered through going overseas and presenting at a lot of conferences is that not a lot of people are doing the work that we do here because it's challenging and it's hard and it's tricky to figure it all out.
And so we started in October 2019 to offer some training courses that specifically looked at, the sensory preferences of people with autism, how support their communication, how they best learn, the way they process information, so that we could educate the community more about what best practice in supporting children with autism look like. From there, that has continued to grow. I think we started with about 3 courses in 2019, and now I think coming into the new year, we're going to have about 35 courses that we're offering.
Instead of kind of focusing just on the disability, we introduced things like all of those usual things that you would see happening in school.
One of the things we did start with was hiking, getting these young people out, part of nature that many thought that weren't possible. We even historically have done some overnight hiking camps, which was just an incredible achievement.
I'm pretty proud to work here, and I think I'm very lucky to work with being able to build relationships with parents and families and kids over time is a really nice part of being in this community.
So there were many nights that both myself and staff spent in ICUs and in hospitals that were beyond just the 9 to 3 of school or just the 9 to 3 of term time.
And I guess that moment when we opened, when we actually had a site, where we had staff, I can remember just standing in the playground that we've just walked through and thinking, oh my God, we've done it. We're being told, it'll never work. You can't do it. So, we'd really worked hard to overcome a lot of obstacles.
So when people ask me why I love working at Giant Steps, the reason why I love working at Giant Steps is that the whole approach to the organisation is that there's always a way. There is no difficult problem that is too difficult. And the only reason that we can have this approach at Giant Steps is the support we get. We need your support. We need the help of our partners to be able to actually say to a family, we have you, we'll find a way, let's work through it.
I must admit there were times when I did pressure the board and Barry to find those sort of extra dollars.
We would fundraise, and every time we had a successful fundraising year, we would just say, that's good, we can take more children. And we would just continue to take more children because we have very large lists of people that would like to join. We don't call them waiting lists, we call them eligibility lists, because quite often it won't be the next person on the list, will be the person in most need.
When you have to say no is the worst part of the job, where we just don't have the space. So we need to keep growing and meet that need. All we can do is try to grow and be able to say yes more often.
With autism, the children, they get bigger, they get stronger, they want more independence, and trying to navigate that whilst keeping them safe, keeping yourself safe, it becomes harder and harder, for sure, and the dangers become more and more real. You cannot predict what your challenges are going to be, but Giant Steps have seen it all, and they've seen, the kids that come here are the ones with the greatest challenges. And the one thing is Giant Steps will never say it's too hard, ever. Every time we come with a new problem, it's just met with such absolute positivity you can do this, and we will get through this, and we have done this before, and we will get your family through this too.
For me, over the years, and especially when I talk about those early days where he was terrified to leave the house, and it was hard to see. He rarely smiled, and he was just so full of anxiety all the time. So we have a smiling boy. But not only do we have a smiling boy, it's funny, when I dropped him off this morning at Giant Steps, I looked around and said, he's gone, because he was out of the car and gone before I'd only just pulled up, and I was talking to some of the staff members, and he was out because he was just delighted to be here.
The luckiest part is that Teddy's here at Giant Steps, and this is where he really fits in. And I don't think there's anywhere else in the world that he would fit in. So I knew that as soon as we came to see this school, I just felt like we were home. That was the biggest feeling that I had, was just that we were in this environment for the first time, and I was suddenly having all these conversations with staff and with other parents, and just thinking, we've just found our normal. Finally, we found our normal.
We were just struggling to get some reasonable school for our young kids. And, what it's grown into is just fantastic. And, with the school in Melbourne and the adult programs, and now the purchase of the property at Eleanor, it's beyond what anybody imagined. It's important for us to see that the future generations will continue to have the sort of opportunities that Patrick and the children who started here 30 years ago and 20 years ago and 10 years ago have been lucky enough to have.
In a way, we've kept growing Giant Steps because we had no choice, because we didn't want families to be in the position we were in when we first started. We never have huge reserves because we always grow if we create some reserves, because there's always the next family to help. To me, I've always been amazed that you see mums that, are quite often dealing with the primary care, but then they turn up and fundraise. The most stressed people with the smallest amounts of time because of the challenges they have, and because they're also, perhaps trying to hold down a job and look after, their broader family. But there they are, fundraising. So there is nothing that families won't do to try and fundraise.
I think we all have to do something, and we all have to give a little and as much as we can. So I would say, give what you can afford, but also if it's not necessarily money, it's your resources, it's your time. That's just really important as well.
We do ask because we do know we make a difference, and I think that's the comfort in asking, but it's also the comfort in giving, because we're not only worried for our children, we're worried for all the other children that are at Giant Steps or need to be at Giant Steps. Any help means that community just grew a little bigger again, and those families feel part of a bigger and bigger community.